Dallas Cowboys select
wide receiver from Marshall University, Randy Moss.
Mike told me to remind you guys that he will still be in videos for a few weeks because of videos he has already recorded. Alright, back to the video.
What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Cantalupo. Despite arguably being one of the best athletes to ever walk on a football field, things didn't always come easy to Hall of Fame wide receiver Randy Moss. When the West Virginia native was deciding where to play college ball, the high school star was set to go to Notre Dame. However, due to off-the-field incidents, Lou Holtz and the Fighting Irish withdrew their enrollment from Moss. Future football legend was then set to be mentored by legendary coach Bobby Bowden at Florida State until a positive test for pot in his post-redshirt season. Because of that, Moss was once again let go by a historic football program. Eventually, it was at Marshall University, formerly a Division I AA school, where Moss burst onto the national landscape, dazzling fans and scouts with his athleticism and off-the-chart talent. Help that he had Chad Pennington as his quarterback. After a record-breaking collegiate career, Moss entered the 1998 draft, and while fellow Heisman candidates Peyton Manning, Ryan Leaf, and Charles Woodson were selected within the first 5 picks, Moss dropped. Though arguably the most talented prospect in the class, Moss's off-the-field incidents turned teams away. Most famously, there is the tale of the Cowboys owner and general manager, Jerry Jones, telling Moss that Dallas would draft the talent but troubled prospect. As a childhood fan of the team, Moss was ecstatic to play in Dallas. However, with the 8th pick, America's team selected defensive end Greg Ellis. Moss fell to the Vikings with the 21st pick. This provided him with an added fuel for the rest of his career. He wanted to make sure every team, including the Cowboys, knew that they had passed up on a generational talent. Moss then proceeded to, and I quote, wreck this whole league, and doing so throughout the course of 16 memorable seasons. Outside of Jerry Rice and that one old guy who will say Don Hutson, there are arguably no better and more dominant players at the wide receiver position than Moss in the history of the NFL. As of the end of the 2017 NFL season, Moss still holds the record for receiving touchdowns in a season, as well as the 4th spot in all-time receiving yards. However, fearing the off-field trouble associated with Moss, he surprisingly dropped in the draft. Most teams in the league passed on him, most notably the Cowboys. In the early 90s, Dallas had Michael Irvin, a Hall of Fame talent, but also a wideout who was no stranger to a negative headline. Looking back at those great Cowboys teams, as well as the Dallas teams after their Super Bowl runs, Jones had taken a chance on a bunch of rough riders, including Leon Lett, Andy Gregory, Demetrius Underwood, Adam Pac-Man Jones, and Greg Hardy, just to name a few. So if Jones has been known to give chances to guys with questionable paths, why didn't he give Randy Moss a chance? It's a question which haunts many Cowboy fans to this day. But we here at TPS would like to take a step back for a second and imagine what would have happened if the Dallas Cowboys took Randy Moss with the 8th pick in the 98 draft. If Randy Moss joins the 1998 Cowboys, Dallas, who are a few years out of their last Super Bowl win, are rejuvenated thanks to their new wideout. It is Michael Irvin and Moss who form a extremely talented wideout duo, while the Chris Carter Randy Moss relationship was akin to a mentor type student type of relationship. Irving and Moss form a more Cheech and Chong partnership, but it works like the Minnesota duo did in real life. In this what-if timeline, a rookie Moss and the Cowboys stretch the field deep, while the veteran Irvin gobbles up all those short and intermediate passes across the middle. Towards the end of their careers, the triplets of Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, and Irvin are able to put up more of an offensive burden in Moss. Because of this, even though Jimmy Johnson is gone and the defense isn't what it used to be, Dallas doesn't get upset in the wild card week during the 98 season, but in fact, they advance to the NFC Championship game. In the divisional round, Dallas upsets the second seed in the conference, the Minnesota Vikings. Because guess what? They don't have Randy Moss anymore. Even with Moss joining the Cowboys instead, the '98 Vikings remain one of the best teams in the conference. Let's be real. Despite missing the prodigy from Marshall, Randall Cunningham still has a resurgent season late in his career. The once dynamic scrambler who had become a classic drop-back passer still had Hall of Famer Chris Carter and Pro Bowl all-purpose running back Robert Smith. Those are two key weapons at Cunningham's disposals. Instead of going 15-1, let's say Minnesota ends up going 12-4. Although they're an elite offense, the Vikings aren't the historic God-level offense they became with Randy Moss, which is why they fall to Dallas in the second weekend of the postseason. Even though a loss in the divisional round stinks for the purple and gold, it's not as rough as the real-world timeline where Minnesota was a Gary Anderson field goal away from icing the conference championship.
And Anderson hasn't missed in 2 years.
So that's a pretty good bet. If you say, do you think Gary Anderson will make this field goal? The answer should probably be yes.
39 yards away, and it's not good.
For Vikings fans, it's more like the postseason losses in 2017. Yeah, it stinks to get blown out in the playoffs, but at least it's not that cruel heartbreaker at the end like the 1975 divisional loss to Dallas, which ended with the first Hail Mary in NFL history, or the Brett Favre pick in the '09 Conference Championship, or a Blair Walsh cheap shot miss.
Laces out.
Wow. I'm sorry, Vikings fans. Anyway, in the end, Dallas falls to the Falcons in the conference championship, but there is hope in Big D, who hadn't made it this far in the playoffs since 1995. In '99, Moss's second season, while he is excellent, unfortunately, the rest of the offense isn't getting any younger. Offensive stalwarts Irvin and Moose Johnson suffer career-ending injuries, and Dallas is no match for the Vikings in their postseason rematch. Concussion problems force Aikman into retirement in 2000, yet all-time leading rusher Emmitt Smith is still there, and as well as newly acquired backup quarterback Randall Cunningham. Moss helps Cunningham age gracefully in his final 2 seasons in the league. Moss puts up back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons with Cunningham, who sticks with Dallas for 2 seasons. Unfortunately, the rest of the team is a shell of that early 90s dynasty, and the Cowboys fail to make the playoffs in these 2 seasons. The forgettable era of Moss's career, when he spent 2 seasons with the Oakland Raiders, begins in Dallas by 2002, with his mentor and his favorite quarterback long gone. Moss, who had 4 straight 1,000-yard seasons, voices his frustration to Jerry Jones and the locker room. Moss plays 2 more forgettable seasons in Dallas, and by the start of the 2004-2005 season, he's sent to the San Diego Chargers, who will have a talented young quarterback in Drew Brees. With the combination of Brees, Moss, and rookie LaDainian Tomlinson, San Diego immediately vaults itself into the top of the conference. Even though Moss and Tom Brady made beautiful music together while teammates in New England, many fans may not remember that these two tearing it up was never really a surefire thing. Moss was coming off 2 below-average seasons with the Raiders, and this is the 2004-2005 Patriots. New England had just won its 3rd title in 4 years en route to the title. The Pats had put up 41 points in the AFC Championship game against a talented Pittsburgh defense. The lack of receiving help, which became very noticeable during the 2006 season, hadn't happened yet for the Pats. Anyway, Moss is part of a historic Hall of Fame set of triplets in San Diego. In his first season with the Chargers, Moss helped San Diego go 10-6, but the Chargers missed the playoffs. After Phillip Rivers replaces Drew Brees the following season, San Diego doesn't get upset in the AFC divisional round to the Pats. Instead, they get to the AFC Championship. Moss, who had a spectacular second season in San Diego, is a matchup nightmare for New England. Unfortunately, the much maligned Colts defense with a healthy Bob Sanders wasn't stopping for no one, and Indy reaches the Super Bowl. However, despite the loss, Marty Schottenheimer is not let go. The following season, with Phillip Rivers beginning to enter the prime of his career and Tomlinson and Moss at his disposal, the Chargers make it to the franchise's second Super Bowl and meet the Giants in the big game. In a matchup between the top two quarterbacks selected in the 2004 draft, Rivers' Chargers beat Eli Manning's Giants to win Super Bowl 42. Because Rivers seeks to balance the offense, Tomlinson doesn't set the single-season touchdown record, and Moss doesn't set the single-season record for touchdown receptions, but the two Hall of Famers are content since they're finally able to hoist the Lombardi Trophy. It is now the 2011 season, Moss' 7th season in San Diego. With this period, Moss had 6,000-yard seasons, 2 Super Bowl titles. San Diego joins the Pats, Steelers, Ravens, and whatever team Peyton Manning is on to form the conference's elite teams. With the talents of Moss and Tomlinson, Rivers has become a recurrent name in the postseason and built up a surefire campaign to Canton. In his final season in the NFL, Moss finishes with 6 touchdowns and 700 yards. By becoming a consistent contributor on a contender, Moss finds a home with the San Diego Chargers instead of team hopping in his final seasons like he did in the real-world timeline. Moss plays only for the Cowboys and the Chargers in his career, with a stable environment around him akin to his time in New England in the real world. Moss finishes with a slightly better career in this what-if timeline than he did in the real world. No one's saying Phillip Rivers is better than Tom Brady, right? It's just that Moss doesn't have to spend his final 3 seasons putting up mediocre numbers on 4 different teams, while still behind the GOAT Jerry Rice on the all-time receiving list. Moss does crack that 17,000 receiving yards mark, placing him second on the all-time list. He also finishes third in touchdowns with 168. And because of the 2 Super Bowl titles for the Chargers, the fan base and the city are in love with the club. As a result, the city does almost anything in its power to keep the franchise in San Diego. The Chargers remain in the city and don't move to Los Angeles. So because of Moss going to Dallas, we miss 2 of the greatest memories in league history. Moss scorching the earth against Dallas with 3 Thanksgiving touchdowns in his rookie season, and fellow classmate Peyton Manning literally, finally getting past the Pats in a historic 2006 AFC Championship. While at least Moss, Phillip Rivers, and LaDainian Tomlinson and Marty Schottenheimer actually get Super Bowl rings, I guess that's an okay trade-off. Thank you guys for watching. Till next time, hey, subscribe. I'm Mike Cantalupo. See you later.